And it's already on, Seth. Welcome back to
There we go.
another episode of Imagine More. We've been 2 or 3 weeks here. We haven't been on with you guys. But, the reason why is because, there's been so much breaking news. We had to wait to all go through the pipeline so we can have our opinions on everything. I can tell you this. We have a lot in store for you today. We have our good friend Jeremy here from Twitter and his famous cat, which he's going to tell us the name of his cat because they're making a cameo right now. Um, but yeah, so Jeremy, his cat, and Seth and I, we're going to give you a great show. We have a lot to talk about. We've had some crazy economic news, and this is why UBI is so important, and we'll show you. And we also have some great news about just straight up immigration law and how it's affecting what we can do as progressives to kind of really fix that and retool what that is. So we look forward to an impactful show. But without further ado, how you been, Seth?
I've been pretty solid more recently. Obviously, every single day is like very confusing what's going to happen next. Like one day you got an economic crash, the next day it's the greatest increase in the stock market in history, and then the next day we're crashing again. It's very unstable times, very unpredictable and scary. Don't know how it's going to affect any of our jobs day to day. Like I work in a bar. Do we have tariffs on our tequila? Do we not? I don't know. Like very
Jeez, yeah,
unpredictable. Hard to even follow with how much stuff is going on. So
Uh-huh.
I guess we'll all just live through it together.
exactly.
How you been, Jeremy?
So, yeah, Jeremy, how you been?
I have been pretty well. Yeah, just it's a lot going on, that's for sure. I mean, that's definitely
Yeah.
that's definitely the T. So it's I mean it's a lot more than even barely makes the news, and it's between this week's stock market, we've got the immigration stuff that's come down, in addition to a few executive orders that Trump signed last night that were pretty nasty. Um, it's a lot.
Yeah. It is. It is a lot. I tell you that. I mean, it is one of these things where you're like, you can't say I told you so, but you can definitely say I told you so. So it's like, as progressive, we're like, hey, this guy is no good for the country. He's self-serving. He doesn't think about the economy as a whole because, as you know, the spectrum of America is rich, poor, middle class, and he only sees one class, 1/3 of the classes, and he leaves the other 2/3 behind. And so, a lot of these things and a lot of these policies that he's come out with
Yeah.
have been strictly to benefit the upper class, but they didn't even ask for it, and they didn't even want it. And so he's trying to
Yeah.
essentially come up with these tariffs.
I don't even think it's benefiting almost any of them either.
No,
Yeah.
his intent was to.
Oh, sorry, little lag.
Okay.
I don't think it's benefiting rich people.
No.
Right, he's kind of screwed over rich people while we're at it. Like it's I mean it's just it's instability that's hard to predict or even work around or even plan around or even organize around, go up against. I mean, it's hard because it is so much at so many different angles and so many different ways that you don't really know what to even hook onto or how you can do things, and which I mean I guess is kind of part of the plan that that's pretty much something that came from Steve Bannon and his direction, and that's how he has kind of laid things out in his whole flood the zone speech that he gave. Is you just hit everything with everything all at once, and it becomes hard to handle and know exactly where to go, what to do, and you can only take things one so much at a time that it is kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I don't know about you, Seth, but I know for me, it was one of those things where it was like I turned on my phone and I was like, okay, cool. He just put 20% auto tariffs tax, and then 3 hours later, he's like, okay, no, I'm going to put 25%. And then the next day, he's like, no, I'm going to put the tax on everyone. And then the next day, it's like, no, I'm just going to take them all back. And then I'm going to be like, oh, let me go and increase my tariff to China from 54% to 84. Then let me go the next day, go 100%. Then the next day, it's like, let me go 125% with my tariffs.
Yeah.
And all that was 1 week.
Yeah, right.
And so I don't
Yeah.
know about you, Seth, but how does that make you feel, man? That's crazy.
There doesn't
right?
seem to be any rhyme or reason. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the logic behind it?
Like I said,
right,
doesn't seem
there isn't.
There's no logic at all.
There
No, there's
really,
no logic.
there really isn't. Trump seems to be, when he's allowed to just ramble on, he seems to think that trade deficits, like if a country buys $1 million worth of stuff from us, and this other country only buys $50 million worth of stuff, that somehow $50 million has gone missing in some way or another.
Yeah.
And that's just not what trade deficits are. That's not how they work. He thinks we're like subsidizing them to the tune of $50 million in my example. And it's like, that's not it's just not how anything works. And I mean, if it's what it seems like he's basing everything on, and this decision to tariff, which also he doesn't seem to understand where tariff money comes from. He thinks we tariff
Jeremy,
a certain
Jeremy,
country.
explain that to us. What, for all people who don't understand how tariffs work, can you give us a brief breakdown how that works, man?
Yeah, so tariffs are import tax. They talked about it on Kamala talked about it on the campaign trail as a sales tax, which import tax is probably a better term for it, and still resonates, but sales tax kind of works. And yeah, it's just you pay it on the value of the thing that you're dropping off at the port based off of its origin of entry, and that cost goes, I mean, suppliers can in some cases, and price in some tariffs and everything, but you get to a point where you gotta pass it off to the final person paying. And so the tariffs come from inside the inside the country. They're a cost to the citizens, and generally that cost has been always thought as a form of protectionism. It was a larger source of government revenue in the past, but we also didn't have the trade, the supply chains, the global scale that we do, and also stuff in general. We just have more things and technology and just stuff. And so that's why tariffs have kind of fallen out of favor. But they're a tax on the people in the country that's levying them. And so they just end up raising our prices, which raises inflation, decreases economic activity, and just all sorts of that stuff. So they're I don't know. There's just no logic behind it as far as what's it seems like Trump's thinking about how any of this works, and he's basing it off of that, and it's just kind of crazy. And he's got nobody around him to tell him no, or actually explain how these things work, and so they just let him do it.
Yeah, his Secretary of Treasury, I just don't know what he's doing, man. It's like he knows the only reason why he pulled back from the 90-day tariff was because he was scared what was going to happen in the bonds market. Because, the bonds market is essentially, for all you guys don't understand, the American dollar, the way it's structured is it's backed by our faith and belief in it. So there used to be where we were backed by gold or some kind of other commodity that protected the dollar. Now it's not backed by that. It's backed by kind of our belief system that we know the American dollar is going to be strong forever because our economy is strong. So when the market started to tank, then the bond market, he knew at that point he was going to drive us straight into a recession or to a Great Depression. And so that's why he decided to pull up. It wasn't because all of a sudden his people, his advisors were like, this is kind of a bad idea.
Right.
It was terrible.
Right. It was that one indicator that says, I mean, well, and that's the thing is usually when you see, I mean, you'd expect the stock market to go down, if prices are going to go up, and that's a sign of the future confidence as well, almost just like the bond market. But bonds are generally considered safe. People flock to bonds during recession times, which increases the demand for debt, and then people don't, the treasury doesn't have to pay as high of interest on it, and then that actually kind of helps with the whole interest rates, inflation, jobs, and that whole balance that exists. And here we've got a collapsing stock market and a rise in in the cost of bonds for the treasury, and usually those two go the other direction. And so that means people aren't trusting the dollar, nor are they trusting or wanting to invest in corporations and stuff in the future. And that is that's a scary thing to happen. Really, when it just comes to, well, the U.S. is stable. It's that that full faith and credit part of the U.S. and the Constitution isn't really just as far as cutting the checks. It ends up being essentially how the U.S. is and represents itself on the global stage, and how we became world superpower, especially after World War II. And so if people are losing faith in our, basically our stability and that full faith and credit, they're going to demand a premium on it. And so basically it's the instability that is driving up the price that the treasury is going to have to pay to service debt. And all while things are slowing down, and the U.S. will collect less tax revenue, and that just is going to explode the debt further. It's also interconnected, and it's all not doing the things that they've done in the past during COVID, during recessions, things like that. And so we're losing the discount that we get for kind of being the world superpower, and a source of stability throughout the world.
Yeah. So tell me, you work right now currently. I guess you're in the front line, really. You're a frontline employee, so you get to see these impacts. Like, it's like your management, like, daily, like, nervous about numbers, like, because I know the restaurant business, like, the margins are extremely small, and I wonder, like, if your bosses like getting pressure on you guys, like, hey, these tariffs are gonna kill our margins. Is they kind of warned you guys, like, layoffs are coming or anything like that? Any scary things?
Well, I feel like more the with like the head chef about how much certain things. What was it specifically? Avocados, something like that. Where he's just talking about how much a case costed like 2 weeks ago versus now, and it's definitely going to impact us somehow because our owners are actually Mexican, so they're like Mexican Jewish or something like that. So there's definitely going to be some sort of impact on. They have certain deals with certain liquors and stuff like that, which is why we promote certain ones versus other ones. And there's definitely gonna be some impact on that. People, customers saying like, buy Crown Royal now while you can because it's Canadian whiskey. Like, there's definitely gonna be some sort of impact in pricing, and it's not gonna be worth it to buy certain goods anymore. Like, and tequila is like a maiden seller for us, and almost most tequila is made to some extent in Mexico. Yeah. So there's gonna be a major any tequila that you buy. It's really pointless too. And like I said, I don't think that this is an economic decision by Trump. This is purely about power. He's not doing this so he can get anything for America. He's doing this because he wants to control the world. He wants to control the foreign leaders. You see the things he's bragging about. Oh, the foreign leaders are kissing my ass trying to get a trade deal. All he wants is hold the entire world hostage.
Yep. He's
trying to hold the entire world hostage so that he can Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. It's a mob boss mentality. And that's how he's. That's how he's been since he's really been in the media. And yeah, to put that in this kind of level of power, and in his first term, the sky didn't fall. Obviously things were crazy for 4 years, but again, last time he had people that told him no, or that's illegal, or you just can't change the definition of an amendment. We're still on that thing still exists. and now that's gone. Any check on his power is gone, because if you tell him no, you're gonna get kicked out, and you'll be replaced with somebody that'll tell him yes. So it's insane, and it's very.
It's insane, and that's why he's been flowing these ideas now. Like he can run for a third term. That's crazy to think that someone can think in their mind that he can run third term, and it's clearly unconstitutional. But he's saying what he's essentially saying to everybody is like, guess what? I have the political clout to be able to do it and pass an amendment and have it achieve it. Now I don't think he does, but that's just what he's portraying. And for me, I just feel like he is kind of making world leaders nervous, because they're like, well, if he's not going to follow the rules or the laws of your own country, what makes you think he's going to follow the rules and the laws internationally? Like he does what he wants to do. He's not beholden to any real check or balances. The Supreme Court does the best they can, but the Supreme Court doesn't have an army.
Right. Right. And technically Trump doesn't have an army yet, but at the same time, really getting the army, and that's slightly further in the future. Who knows, 2 months or 3 weeks or 2 years. That is the ultimate plan that they are going for. And if you can stack up the army under the president instead of chain of command and oath to the Constitution and all that stuff, then it's pretty much gone at that point. And that's the goal. He's already committed several hundred impeachable offenses. You can go down the Declaration of Independence and even start doing check marks and going, yep, he's done that one. Every roadblock that they put in after Richard Nixon, he's just pretty much steamrolled. Other roadblocks too that have existed are or will be getting steamrolled. I know that's Humphrey's executor. That case that really solidified the independence of agencies like the FEC. That wall is definitely going to be broken down. Some of the other stuff, some of the slashing USAID, that's an appropriations issue. There's so many things, and really the only way to stop it right now is to impeach him, which isn't going to happen. I don't like the idea of making that an excuse as to not. We've got 200 and some Dems, and you can offer it as a privileged resolution. It's got to get voted on. So I got pretty much any floor day covered to do that for the next 2 years. One by one, you could do it. It would make Johnson very sad and would slow things down, which would be great. That's another piece of kind of resisting. But
but don't you think they're gonna I think the Republicans are gonna slow themselves down. Don't you think so? Because I feel like there's already chirps about Yeah, go ahead. Seth has his lag sometimes, guys. I don't know if he's lagging or if he's waiting for me to stop speaking. Seth, are you lagging?
It's
Okay. Like I was to say, I wanted to know, Seth,
yeah.
do you think that the Republicans can actually pull it together and get anything passed? Yeah, so he's lagging. So I don't think that
I think, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. You there with me, Seth? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Why he fixing his
It just keeps like it's like 14 seconds.
Okay. So go ahead and chime in when you're ready.
Okay. It's readjusting now. I think we're getting back. Man, yeah, no, Democrats, if they want to impeach or whatever, that's gonna have to wait to them. I mean, at this point, we just have to hope that they don't do anything stupid, or that they do, and it's enough to piss off Republicans. They start to turn against policy provisions. Like I do think that there will be something passed, like maybe not, but there might be enough of a majority pass something that prevents Trump from unilaterally enforcing tariffs, like something Rand Paul had suggested. I think that that's something that's feasible.
Well,
I don't know how many free trade Republicans are left, but that used to be a majority of them.
Well, Seth, explain the free trade Republicans and also explain Rand Paul's position. No, I was going to say explain the free trade Republicans and also explain what Rand Paul's position. You hear me, Seth?
Yeah, work within it. Yeah. Well, free trade has always been like a staple of capitalism for investments, any of that stuff to work in the first place. If you want capitalism to function freely, obviously you need trade. That's like an obvious thing. Like 90% of economists, left or right, agree that tariffs are stupid, and there's had this sort of neoliberal hegemony for the last 60, 70 years, however long it's been. The only thing that's changed thus far is Donald Trump just randomly disliking free trade, which is enough to convince the rest of the Republican Party to go completely in line with everything that he says, because he's already done that to them. They've already will change their views no matter whatever Trump says. So it just depends on if they're more principled or if they're more likely to care about their own positional power within the caucus, because Trump has made it clear that he's going to primary everybody that disagrees with him, and that's something that all the Republicans have to consider when they're making their votes, because if you stand against Trump as a Republican, you could lose your power, and that's terrifying for a Republican, obviously, because that's kind of the main reason they're in power in the first place, is they just wanted power. They're not really out for the common good, obviously, but they do generally have a very strong commitment towards free trade because they have investments and they have, their own personal finances. Are they going to prioritize their own finance or their power? Interesting question, because, if they're out for both those two things, which one do they value more? Because you really can't have both in today's modern Republican Party. So it's interesting. Rand Paul has been pretty consistent in his libertarian ethic about basically lack of any sort of regulation and economic central planning. So I'm not surprised he's standing out against this policy, even though he's pretty much given up a lot of his views just to stick with the Republican Party, to kiss up to Trump. So I guess we'll find out if any more Republicans will come. That it's free trade has become a democratic policy now. It's become a democratic value.
Mm-hmm.
That's now been a dividing line between the two parties, which has never been the case before. So them to get something like that passed, and I don't know, it's something I really hope
it would. Yeah. Yeah, it would end up having to be a 2/3 to pass it, because obviously Trump is not going to sign a bill to give up his own power that Congress handed to him. Although these tariffs are largely should be and are really not legal even under the powers that he was given. But yeah, it would functionally be easier to impeach him than it would be to try to just take his tariff powers away. It's kind of funny if you think about it.
I mean, impeaching him is just. I just don't think we have the political clout to do that. I think right now we have to kind of focus more on switching the narrative. Because his narrative has always been about, he's for the common man. He's a populist president. Um, the last one we had a populist president was Barack Obama, which we had on the Democratic side. So we have another populist president. And the only way, Seth, you disagree? You don't think Obama was populist?
Obama, some populist rhetoric that's embodied after George Bush, but I don't think that he really passed almost anything that was populist. I mean, even his most populist policies, like, I don't know, like, were so watered down by corporations. You could definitely argue that wasn't his fault. That's some sort of concession that they make in the Senate. He did propose a public option. He did propose stuff like this, and it only got voted down by, was it Lieberman that made universal health care fail?
Pretty much Lieberman, yeah.
Most of his policies were pretty, most of his policies are pretty centrist. Like even his Walz, after the 2008 crisis, he bailed out the banks. That's not very populist in a populist way, like, protecting the people's money instead of giving the money directly to the banks. He didn't pass that much that was pro-worker. He didn't make things worse for the country, and that's why he's the best president of my lifetime, other than maybe Biden for the first 2 years. But no, he didn't really do anything populist. He definitely did have the charisma to convince people that he was populist, or at least in 2008. But especially after the first 2 years, he kind of gave up that aspect too, and just sort of fit within the Washington mold of establishment politics.
That's interesting, because I thought he was I personally thought he was very populist. I think that in terms of getting, I don't know. When you look at the last presidencies, I mean, let's look at the last 4 Democrats. We're talking about Barack Obama, who got universal health care passed. You're talking about President Bill Clinton, who essentially got NAFTA passed, which was definitely not populist. And then you had
What's before that? Carter,
and we don't even know what Carter did. Let's be honest, we didn't know.
Jimmy Carter created stagflation.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what he did. So when you look at it, out of all the 4 of them, Obama was the populist.
Jimmy Carter really opened up the possibility of home brewing. So there's that.
No, that is
craft beer in general.
No, Jimmy Carter. I made fun of him just now, but he actually was in terms of morality and how a president should conduct themselves, he's run up there as one of the top guys. In terms of effectiveness, obviously that's different than representation. But
right.
So I guess every president has his mark on the world, I guess, and his mark was just hard to be dignified. So I just really think that what I see here is I just see Trump is a populist, right? Similar to the mold of Obama, even though Seth may agree about how populist he was. But in terms of his support, he gets support across the aisle. And a lot of people don't talk about that with Trump, that it's like, oh, no, Democrats support him, and that's not true. Democrats do support Trump. And much as we don't want to ignore that part of it, it's the reality of the world. He can't get elected without Democratic support. So what we're missing, in my opinion, is what's that message that connects both sides and that moves the narrative. And I think that this was the first step. These The Democratic response to the tariffs was like the first, in my opinion, positive steps of changing the narrative. And Seth, you raising your hand? No, you just fingered
Yeah,
yourself.
I'm just gonna do that every time I want to talk because
Okay. Yeah,
I risk it.
I tell you, I
Uh,
feel like a teacher was like, I gotta call
yeah, I mean,
Seth because his hand's up. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I would say Obama definitely. I don't think. All right, so here's the thing: is populism today is different than populism in 2008. I think that populism generally means like for the workers, they're for like anti-establishment politics and stuff like that. I think Obama was super popular because he was through the left and right aspect of things before that was a popular, not very
Yeah.
left wing at all. He was very handsome and charismatic. He he was anti-war originally. He was very much against all of Bush's interventions, and I think that was a very popular sentiment. And he didn't push the docket too much. His ideas were more and like hope and change. It wasn't like policy oriented, so that was easier to appeal to a broader base of people, which I think you could call populism to an extent. But populism is more a style of a stance against government, that kind of thing. I don't think he falls because he's definitely very technocratic in his policies. He's not populist, but he did strike the same chord that's needed. One that is who's actually embodying that more than anybody, ironically, is Stephen A. Smith, where you're kind of like not really on either side, but you can kind of no, honestly, if you listen to the things that
I see
Stephen
what
A.
you
Smith
mean.
has been
Yeah.
talking about,
Yeah, I feel.
yeah, it's like broad appeal. It's like upsetting the least amount of people. It's he for we'll give it now is talking about like he is pro immigration but also pro deportation and anti illegal immigrants. He's kind of against the trans and sports things, but he's keeps saying he's anti left and anti right, but he's also pro free trade, but pro capitalism. He's against high taxes. He's doing basically everything that like the standard middle of the road American would believe if they're not politically educated. Like everything that sounds good on paper. And I think that is kind of something that's been working for people like RFK, who I think struck that populist chord, where you can kind of pull the more popular policy positions for both sides. Because the reason why we have a left and right is because the thing people generally have more ideological positioning versus like just picking things that are populist or popular across the board. So I feel like there's a difference between popular across the board and actually the definition. And I think we could definitely translate about the Stephen A. Smith thing because he's now saying he won't close the door on running for president. And I think that he's somebody that I've heard the most apolitical people I know be like just bros that like watch ESPN are like, yeah, I'd vote for Stephen A. Smith. And people register for to vote for the first time, not because they care about politics, but because he's the kind of person that would ruffle the least amount of feathers and bring out the most amount of people to vote. So what do you guys think about Stephen A. Smith?
I mean, you want to take this one first, Jeremy?
Sure. I mean, he does, when he does talk politics and stuff, he does tend to, it sound appealing, sound, pretty good, or, even kind of straddle that, kind of general people pleaser line. I don't know, it's necessarily about, let's say he were to get elected, if I'd be incredibly excited, but that's just me. That's just a preference. And I mean, at this point, I really wouldn't care. Somebody normal that, would at least ask somebody, hey, is this legal? And then they would say no. And then,
Yeah.
that would be great. That's about where my standard is at the same time, obviously, that's about the only thing that is needed of a president at this point. But I definitely maybe hope for somebody else, but I wouldn't be necessarily mad at it. Especially given a little bit of time coaching, actually developing, positions, or as you learn about. What's really interesting is the more you learn about how things work, you start to just can almost excuse or understand anything. But once you do learn how things work, it's that you get better at just understanding and explaining and things. And I could definitely see that as a future for him. So I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be mad at it. Probably prefer someone else, but I wouldn't be mad at it.
No, I mean, me, but Stephen A. Smith, I've been watching him forever. I'm big into sports. Seth knows that. I'm a big Golden State Warriors fan. We still got to go catch a game in San Diego, San Francisco. See the Warriors. I love his sports. In terms of his policies, I agree with Jeremy. He doesn't really have hardcore stances. And it's always okay for that to happen when you're not required to have to speak up. So a lot of times where a lot of politicians, like this happens a lot with The Rock. People are like, oh my God, I want The Rock to run for president, right? These guys are great because they are apolitical. And people like them because they don't really have an opinion that kind of sways you one way or the other. Once they get into the politics, it becomes very hard to win a primary like that because people are like, well, I believe in this. What do you believe in? And he's like, well, I believe in this Republican stance way over here. And people are like, why would I vote for you? So,
right, and especially to the the way that our primaries work. The primary base is, I mean, Republicans, Dems. I mean, there's a certain set of people that vote in primaries, and it's not a lot of us,
it's
so
not.
and they are very ideological, and I mean, pluck 2016 for everyone again. And I mean, you literally had pretty much half Bernie and half Hillary in it. And which are just two totally different ways of governing, approaching things, and both would not be bad candidates or be bad in their as the president, but yeah, two totally different things. And it was definitely a fight between the two, and so that's why I favor bringing back the smoke-filled rooms and leaving things to the convention. But but I mean, even then, you can we know that gets messy on top of it too. I mean, what was that? Dem ran basically a conventional summer back in I think it was the 20s, before they went to, and then was it 68, and then that's when they started moving more to primaries and letting conventions just basically being a party convention thing, versus a very serious business of picking our nominee. But there's definitely something to say about those differences, and you get the know-hows to know versus getting that fight between a lot more people. So
yeah, I mean, that's why I think that when you look at people like celebrities, pretty much this always happens to celebrities, when they get typecasted into the political thing, I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but it's very rare that a celebrity's going to risk their money to take a real position on anything. They're going to take the populist view on a lot of things because a lot of things, it doesn't affect their money because guess what? Generally, people believe this, and the faction that doesn't really believe it is a very minute faction that doesn't believe it, and it doesn't really overall hurt their bottom line as a celebrity. So I always take what celebrities say with a grain of salt because I know everything they do they kind of get screened by the producers, and the producers like, yeah, you have these type of voters, so you can't say that. Or you have this type of, because all that stuff, a lot of people don't realize. A lot of politicians, a lot of them are talking to you based on data. Like we have the DeSantis is like the king of that, and I guess you guys on the Florida governor. It's like everything that comes out of his mouth it's been run and tested before it says it, and he's very scripted like that. Trump is to a certain degree, but not really. I mean, he knows. I believe that he knows the data, but he's going to say whatever he wants to still, even with, even with that information. So he's a little less scripted, but a lot. I would say 80% of politicians are very scripted in terms of they know exactly what to say at what time. Except you saw this when I ran. It was like we spent 2 or 3 hours. It's like, hey, we're going to this meeting. What is it that like I'm not very scripted. The way I work is I take a stance on something and I try to find the commonality of that stance with the audience that I'm talking to, right? So even though my position may be extreme to that audience, I find the common elements within my position to have a way to connect. And so Seth makes fun of me all the time. He's like, "Hey, it seems like you're flip flopping." It's like, no, Seth, I'm just kind of reasoning with the audience. I'm not gonna go to an audience that believes in like no deforestation and start talking about you know lights and electricity and that's just know your audience when you speak. So I to put a cap on that. I like Stephen A. I think he's a great orator. He's very good at understanding who listens to him and understands what they like and what's they're looking for. I just don't think that's people don't pick presidents like that. People pick presidents by, at least in my opinion, a person who truly, truly believes in what they believe in. And what the cards may fall, what they may. I mean, I can tell you this: a lot of Trump supporters are Bernie supporters, and these guys are on completely opposite sides of the thing. But people believe them when they believe in their convictions, and that's I think ultimately what people always look for in politicians is authenticity, and do they truly have a conviction to make a change? And I think that's what kind of hurt us in the last race. I feel like we didn't have a candidate that people believed that she was strong in her convictions of what where her stances were. I think a lot of people thought she would just they didn't think she would be Trump. They know she would be more educated than that. But I think what they really ultimately decided was that I truly don't know who she is. I don't know if I give her this position, what she's capable of doing. Now, you know, we may as progressives think that's ridiculous. You voted for Trump. That's the most unpredictable guy ever, right? So if you want something that's surefire, you should, Trump is not your guy. But I think what truly the fallacy in our position as progressive in that respects is that we tend to forget that progressive policies are popular, but saying progressive is not. And so we always tend to forget that. And so we
Yeah.
do very bad job sometimes as progressive as narrating or articulating our story to the common man. And so I think that's something that we definitely need to look out for. You want to say something, Seth?
Mhm. Yes. I you made 2 points. One point that I agreed with and one point that I disagreed with at the end there.
Sure.
You were talking about how like the thing that people ultimately vote for is like the conviction aspect, like if they really stand for something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that part is true
Yeah.
because I like we just established, Trump doesn't really stand for anything specific.
Yeah.
Is wavery on every single. I feel like Obama was kind of similar in which he's
Mm-hmm.
differed from what he campaigned on versus what he actually did. But
Yeah.
then you rebounded your point. The main thing is authenticity. People want to know that the thing that you're saying is derived from within. It's not from the donor class. It's not you catering to what I want to hear. I think that is why I would put, having thought about it, I think this right now, Stephen A. Smith has like the second highest odds to become the Democratic nominee out of any candidate. And I think the number one person would probably be Tim Walz still, honestly, because he got the name recognition and he's really kind of getting his stride right now with his campaigning, stuff like that. He's got fairly broad appeal, and his sort of Republicans or moderate people that think that they don't like him have not seen enough of him to really have that convicted stance. I don't think that that's something that would last. He doesn't have a lot of baggage. So I think Tim Walz is still the best chance the Democrats have. But other than that, I think Stephen A. Smith really taps into the antidote to Trump, of Trumpism, which is being the Democratic Trump. And I think that we were talking about him in a primary. I don't think that him being super well positioned in his own views is harmful to him. Now, in a primary, you would think so. The Democratic primary, there's a lot of more liberal voters, but as we saw in the 2020 primary, the thing that outright won wasn't conviction, wasn't being stance, and it was ultimately about electability.
Yeah.
And especially after how horrifying these last 2 months have been and how bad these next 4 years are going to be, all people are going to want, the Overton window is shifted. All they're going to want is electability. All they're going to want is somebody that can beat the next Republican, which is going to be JD Vance. And Stephen A. Smith is absolutely that person. He's likable. But the most important thing is that, like I said, he's going to bring in formerly apolitical voters into the Democratic primary. That's what won about Trump, or that's what made Trump win in 2016. It wasn't that from the get-go he had the most popular policy positions. It was that he brought in a brand new base of people who had not ever been political or considered voting or cared about it prior. Yeah. And I think that being, most moderate in the most like real sense. I mean, we have moderates in Congress and they're very technocratic and anti-populist. They're very like corporate centrist. He's the opposite of that. He's centrist in the populist kind of way, in which even though he has much more capitalistic, like he's rich kind of views, but he is ultimately somebody who embodies like the energy of just the apolitical person, the middle of the road guy who just is sick of the bullshit, wants some sort of stability, but also wants somebody to speak for them. And I feel like Stephen A. Smith is just he's not gonna cater to either side, and that's really gonna bring in a lot of people that would not otherwise vote for Democrats. Like you had just said, Bernie bros and Trump bros are very similar people. I think a lot of the Trump base would see JD Vance versus Stephen A. Smith. And which primary do you think they would vote in? I honest to God think that a large amount of former Trump voters, especially if they're disillusioned with Trumpism, that Stephen A. Smith embodies that same energy, that the same energy that like RFK embodied, all that type of voter, the anti-establishment, like kind of both sides are the same, but I'm going to vote for Trump because at least he's not part of the system. That kind of voter is going to go for Stephen A. Smith, and they're going to vote emphatically in a primary because he's not a liberal, he's not a conservative, like he says. He's middle of the road kind of guy, and they're going to come out and turn out in numbers. So I feel like initially, just like Trump in 2016, he's going to pull it 3%. He's going to do horrible at the beginning, but like once he gets on that debate stage, it's over. There's not a single Democrat that could stand against him in a debate. Maybe Tim Walz is really good at playing his role as like he's like the positive guy where he's you're comfortable with him. He makes really good points and he can deliver lines really well. But Stephen A. Smith is going to embody that anger, that passion, that's the thing that like we all feel. A vast majority of Americans feel the Trump administration. He's going to be the anti-Trump administration guy. It doesn't matter what he stands for. He's going to actually be able to stand against Trumpism in like a way that doesn't make them feel stupid. He doesn't look down on the Trump supporters in that way. He is already talking to a lot of conservative talk show Candace Owens. I can't remember who else has been on his show, but he's reaching those audiences in a way that I don't think that a standard Democratic politician would be able to, because the main thing that keeps Republican, conservative-leaning voters from considering a Democrat is the D next to their name. It's not the ideas. It's the fact that they're liberal and they're Democrats, and Obama, Hillary Clinton, that's who they associate with. Stephen A. Smith is just a regular Joe guy, and he might be more Democratic-leaning, but at the end of the day, they see him as like an independent, because that's what he's continuing to say. He's like, I'm an independent. Even if he does run a Democratic primary, up till that point, he's going to tell everybody he's an independent so that both sides consider him. And I really think that he has like a broad left and right appeal that I don't know if I've seen in a long time. The only other like celebrity person who could have a similar clout would be like Jon Stewart, which I would be emphatically excited about, because he does have that, in that sort of energy, but he actually is grounded and has really good opinions. Yeah. I don't know how that would fare with him being a 5'7" Jewish man and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I don't know if that would, I don't know. I don't know if him being too political is going to work against him. I think he could have a shot too if he tried, but I still think nobody's who's shown interest in running has a better chance right now than Stephen A. Smith. The only other honorable mentions is like JB Pritzker is interesting. Even though he's pretty liberal, he looks like a Republican, and that's probably good enough for a lot of independents. And like I said, Tim Walz, I still think.
Yeah.
And that's my word.
Yeah,
that's my word.
Yeah. I'm in Minnesota, so Tim's our governor. So we've had a lot of Tim Walz. I know he does plan on running for governor again. Is what it does sound like, but which would be in 26. So that would be what he would take office 27. So I kind of have doubts that he does plan on running. I know he was pretty, I don't want to be president was pretty much his thing. So we'll see what happens there. I know Kamala's always been, floated out there too. And, obviously she has the highest polling, but, we're just so far away from it. What does any of that matter? Yeah. But also at the same time, I really, really think she's just run for governor of California, do it. Nixon couldn't. Or something like that. And obviously if she runs for governor of California, she better not she would basically be jumping right into a presidential race at that time. So it's got to be one or the other. So I guess we'll find out what she does in the near future. I definitely wouldn't expect her to run for president.
You do forget that her opponent is going to be JD Vance, not Trump. So really, like the idea that Kamala Harris is cooked for her presidential odds, if she ran again, she would have a better chance against JD Vance than she did against Trump, in my opinion. But maybe I'm
right. There's so much that's unknown because you say it's not going to be against Trump, and technically no, Trump can't run for a third term. There's the doomer in me, of course. It says, who knows? If there will be an election, that's not a non-zero chance.
Will he even be alive at that point?
Yeah. Well, we've already suffered the sweet embrace of nuclear annihilation. But if Trump says I'm running in the primary and he wants to pretend it's like a regular election, the GOP will nominate him, even though he'll be 80, 86 or 5 or whatever. Then so
does that need a constitutional amendment?
Sure, but at the same time, if you're going to go by constitutional amendment, then by all means, Trump is not even qualified for the office as is. So, it's kind of that, you gotta sure, they're words on a paper, but you gotta enforce that somehow, and that's I don't know how you necessarily
What do you guys think about that?
enforce it, but yeah,
What do you
I
guys
forgot
think
what I was
about
gonna say.
that idea has been floating around that JD Vance would run and name him as VP, and then all of a sudden JD Vance will step
Resign.
aside and then he'll get the third term. How much truth
It's
do you guys think that is?
Well, Trump could I don't even know if it's a VP, but Trump technically could do another 2 years. He can't do a full term. So he could theoretically, in a crazy world in which Trump was not like a dementia-ridden patient or whatever, he could like for 2 years have one VP. Then at that 2 year point, he could drop that VP or fire him and then nominate Trump or something like that, because then technically he is able to serve and he isn't able to like surpass the 2 year limit, or the two years and 1 day limit or whatever, because I think they're supposed to I don't know, there's something where you can serve for 10 years. So but what would he be, 86 at that point?
Yeah.
How old would he be?
Right.
There's no way. I don't even know if he's going to get through this term, because he's not a healthy person. Plus,
Wow.
at any point based on.
But we can't say that anymore, Seth.
I'm not
Can't say
saying.
that anymore.
I'm not justifying. I'm not saying he should. I'm just saying, he's angry in every country on the planet. Anybody from any other country could just decide that's not worth it. And we've never had a more adversarial president in our entire life. I'm just saying, foreign adversaries, I'm not saying anything about Americans, just saying there's a lot of people he's angry, and
yeah, he's making upset.
He is old. He could just die tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Right. And there's just so many possibilities, there's that but when it does come down to the third term thing, there is a colorable argument regarding the whole run as VP or, become Speaker of the House, and, those kinds of tricks. And that's the thing, is they're colorable arguments. They haven't been tested. So, as far as what a court could or would say, that we don't know.
Exactly.
But I think in reality, if he's gonna really try the stupid third term stuff, he's just gonna do it.
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing. He's just gonna do it. And once again, we don't know the state of what state of basically the destruction of all the rules that we know and rely on. How much of that will be there come 2028, with just such a relentless attack already on them. So who knows? It's really what it comes down to. And I guess we'll get there when we get there. But he could also be completely impeached and gone and out of office, and Congress could, if they really, things do get bad and they really do unite, at least on a basic front, that JD Vance, we will impeach you in the matter of 45 seconds if you step out of outside of any reasonable line, and kind of keep him in check during that time. I guess, yeah, who knows? There's just so much unknown.
Here's my question. Is there still a line? Is there a line in which Trump could cross? Within, like, there has to be something in which he could actually not the base, but Congress to impeach him.
The economy collapsed. That's it.
Right.
It kind of did, but like long term.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
it's over. That whole Trumpism is done.
I mean, it's going to have to be a total collapse.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be a very, very bad collapse. But I think, economy. And I think too, gosh, and even that's,
what did you try to do in Canada?
No, I don't even know if that at this point would be, I think you'd get close. But even in general, too, trying to and making it very obvious that he's trying to get the military behind him versus the Constitution.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be one of the more stark lines
Yeah.
that could be done, and I think that could easily get, definitely half of the House, definitely 2/3 of the Senate, and I mean, gosh, anybody that doesn't vote, if it's at least 2/3 of the House, anybody that doesn't vote for it would probably get removed from the House at that point. I mean, you're definitely talking about an emergency at that point, of near collapse of the U.S. government, but it theoretically could get there by then. So, but I think that would be probably one of the biggest lines that that could spark serious and very very swift impeachment.
All right. Any final topics we can cover before we get out of here? We're at the hour.
Yeah.
Anything else we needed?
What are you guys looking forward to this week in terms of the Democrats and our responses? Because I know one of the things for me is see how do we handle the budget. Because the budget is big this year because that includes the tax reform initiatives, increasing increasing some of the tax credits. I want to know. I look forward to see how the Democrats fight on that angle. So I think that's a very strong positioning.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to this week. I want to know what you guys are looking forward to seeing this week in politics.
I really want to see the Dems get together. I know Ken Martin had mentioned it, but what essentially, kind of a shadow cabinet type situation where people do get out and get in front of and really kind of explain what's going on, what's being done, what can counter it, that kind of thing. I really like to see that get together and soon, and because I really want to see the Dems really act more like an opposition and not a minority party.
Yeah.
And I am starting to see that because they are starting to hold nominees up in the Senate, denying cloture, things like that. Would really like to see them step that up and derail the Senate. They're not doing half the things that they could do. Mitch McConnell made the Senate really slow back when Republicans controlled it under Obama, and Mitch McConnell didn't do nearly half the things you can do in the Senate to ruin everyone's day all the time forever. So, I mean,
I'd love to see like the Cory Booker thing where I mean, not just doing things, but clearly like trying to get attention because they probably want to run for president. So all these Dems are just competing for like, how can I outlib or out-resist Trump more than the next guy?
Right. And there's no better place to do that in the Senate because the House and rules there are not the same as in the Senate. And you could spend all morning doing points of order, calling roll for every single one. I mean, you can really make the Senate almost a clown show, the clown show that it is. You get a lot of people very mad, and when you get a lot of people very mad, that's when you have to start cutting deals. So
Yeah.
So that's what I would like to see. So
cool. All right, guys. Well, you got what we would like to see. Let us know what you like to see. Comment on our Twitter and post, and let us know any interesting topics. Like I said, we're gonna have so much to talk about this year because he's going at a rapid pace. Like Jeremy said with Steve Bannon, that's his strategy. So we gotta, as progressives, fight back that strategy and come back at a rapid pace. So I'm looking forward to engaging with you guys, speaking more to you guys, so we can formulate a wall to the next midterms elections, and then hopefully turn the ship around. So thanks, Jeremy, for coming. I don't know if you have any more final words, any Twitter handles for our guest. Let me know. Yeah, Twitter handle,
Thanks.
Jeremy.
Oh yeah, it is. So Fakertarians is actually kind of what, and it's another podcast and group that I'm part of. You can find Fakertarians everywhere. It's a libertarian group. And then my personal, and if you want to follow me, is Jambo, Jambo, Jeremy, on Twitter and Blue Sky. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, Jeremy. Thanks, Seth. You have any final words?
No, I feel like we covered everything. We'll definitely get another episode going soon. I'm gonna post a lot more short clips and stuff this week so we can, get more conversations going. But this was a really good one. Appreciate you for coming on, Jeremy. It's a good talking to you finally.
Yeah, definitely.
I just gotta get going pretty soon,
Sounds great.
Otherwise, you guys have a good rest of your week.
All right, guys.
All right, take care.
Hope you guys imagine more.